Are we live? Oh yeah. Check it out. We got this going on. Hello, can you guys hear me today? That was a little high, I think. We're gonna have some. Does that sound good? Hello, let's see what we got here in the chat. Tell us all where you're from. Who are you? Where are you from today? Welcome to the stream. Oh, yeah. 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 Gonna sing about many things, maybe today. Oh, maybe we won't. Maybe instead we'll talk to somebody special. I think you know who. Oh, let's see what we got here. We got people from Germany, from California, from Mexico, from Norway. My name is Dexter and I'm from Calgary. Hello, Dexter. We got San Diego, West Virginia, France, Denmark, Polska, India, Spain. How's the levels on these things? Are these too loud? We got Ignato Colonia. We got another from India, from Italy, from Vancouver, from Israel, from Netherlands, Scotland. Oh, we've got someone from Constance, Non-Euclidean Dreamers from Constance. We got Germany, Vienna, UK, Netherlands. Many Germans today on the stream, Grant. I think it's going to be a good one. And most especially, so welcome to all of you, but our very special guest today is a man that you know and love very well. You've seen him on such hits as that thing about the cool math thing. Please welcome to the stream, Mr. Grant Sanderson, ladies and gentlemen. Hey Grant, you're on.
Oh, awesome. Hello, everyone. Lovely to be a guest. That was, can I just say that was super impressive?
Thanks. Hold on. I got to give you the choir welcoming you. Welcome to the stream. Oh, yeah. So welcome to the stream. Tell us in the chat if you can hear Grant and me, okay? If you need one of us to turn up our mics or whatever. Yeah. Hi.
Yeah, just no shortage of complaints. That was really awesome. Do you just like improvise those each time? Or
yeah.
Is that a prepared?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is this just we're watching Tim Raw?
Yeah. So like what I do usually, like when there's no guest, is I basically just do that for like 2 hours.
That's awesome.
I'll just like make up random things and like, I don't know, get like suggestions from the chat about like, okay, what should I sing about next? Or like, what should I rap about? And then like occasionally I'll do like actual versions of my songs and whatever. But
I've never felt so intimidated in my life.
You're intimidated. Jesus. You have no right to be intimidated. You should see the comments that I have gotten from people on my Discord and on like the stream chat about like you coming on, where they're like, Grant Sanderson changed my life. Like he's the new Richard Feynman. So
people are too kind. Real quick, I feel like I should actually make one of those YouTube posts to tell any folks that I have.
If you want.
Do people respond to posts?
I mean, it's probably better than it's orders of magnitude, I suppose. Like, I don't think that as many people are going to respond to a community post on YouTube as like an actual video of yours. But
certainly.
But I also think that like compared to posting on your Facebook page is probably like orders of magnitude greater than that.
Given that I like just barely have a Facebook page.
Do you?
The only times I ever log into Facebook are like when I've posted a video. I'm like, oh, I guess I should mention this on the Facebook page that 3BLUE1BROWN technically has, which is also my relationship with Instagram. So
yeah, I was actually
gets very little.
I think I was looking for that, whether you have an Instagram. Do you put anything on it?
The answer is technically, and that is the entire answer.
Right.
Like at the moment, my Instagram usage is that I will like when a new video is put out, like post the thumbnail or an animation associated with it and just be like, there's a new video
Yeah.
for people who like the way that they learn about things is while they're scrolling through Instagram. For a while, Randy the Pie
Wait, the
had
pie has a
a sort
name?
of lifestyle. Oh yeah, his name is
Okay.
Randolph. The blue one is named Randolph.
Okay.
The brown one is named Mortimer.
Wait. There's only one, but there are 3 blue ones. Are they all
The
Randy?
other two, I've given the other two names, but I constantly forget them. So because I like, there's no reason to do this, but I animate the pies in the same context that I animate all of the math stuff, which means it's done programmatically, which means I have to give names to the variables associated with like a given pie if it's on
Aha.
screen. And just what I always do is like the class name is Randolph and the class name is Mortimer and the individual's name is Randy and the individual's name is Morty,
Huh.
which I like because the characters line up. It's like a reference to Trading Places. But if you go to Randy the Pie on Instagram, it exists. Here, maybe I'll like throw a link
Ladies
in the
and gentlemen,
chat.
plug in right now, Randy the Pie. Go to the
Randy the
Instagram.
Pie.
Have you considered like teaming up with like someone who would animate a little less programmatically and like because
Well,
I imagine
see,
doing like Randy the Pie's adventures as like 20-minute specials. No, it might get a little taxing if you have to do it all. I mean, that would be an interesting challenge to like write entirely mathematical functions for like an actual scripted show.
yeah, I think here I'll share one that's slightly musical. It's Randy on top of after I finally like put all my guitars hanging on a wall. So that's in there. Yeah, a proper like adventure Randy cartoon show basically. There has been fan art that's like much more beautifully illustrated pie creatures than anything I could
I
produce.
believe that.
That was at least for like Pi Day, but there's been some more than that. And I almost want to like find that person and be like, hey, do you want to just make a couple of those at 30 frames per second?
a couple of those, meaning 30 of them every second.
We could do 24 FPS actually. I don't know why I'm pushing.
I mean, animators usually draw on 2s, so you could get it down to 12 potentially per second. It's a little.
Wait, I'm not familiar with this.
So
how does this work?
So generally animators, if you're not doing like CG animation, like it's just way too taxing to draw on ones, which is like every frame. So they'll tend to draw on every second frame. And like there's actually kind of a feel, like people say it kind of gives the animation more life. Kind of because it leaves a little more to the animation. You rely a little more on like blurring effects and like it's, I don't know, it just feels like it's easy to get too smooth and kind of roboticized if you're drawing too many frames. I don't know. I mean, I'm not an animator, but this is what I've been told.
I do know in the context of like CG animation that if you try to have things moving but you don't add blurring, that it didn't like a Pixar type thing, it ends up just looking bizarre in a way that you can't quite put your finger on.
Yeah.
So then when you add that blurring, it like all feels very natural. So I wonder if it's the same thing. Like it's just a little too perfect and smooth, and like the images wouldn't actually look like that.
Yeah, I think it also like I don't know. I think it forces you to consider what are the most important moments, and kind of work with those. Didn't you also have like a Randy like a little plushie at some point? Like,
oh, do I? Yeah.
Is that like mass produced? Oh, there he goes. He's gone. People, while Grant is gone, we're gonna. This is your hydration tone. We're gonna take a little hydration break. Just make sure you got your water here. We're all isolating. It's easy to forget to drink. You just want to take a little sip. Just like that. Grant can take a sip.
I've also come branded.
Oh, you're a branding machine. That's excellent. All right.
That wasn't even intentional. That's just what mug I happen to be using.
This has been your hydration moment. Thank you. We're coming back right here with Grant from 3. I've been trying to see if I can pretend to be an actual like host occasionally. It doesn't really work.
That's pretty good actually. No, you could do radio.
I could try.
I think if there's not a Canadian radio station out there who already has been like clamoring to get you to just host for like an hour each day, I don't understand what they're doing with their time and their talent search efforts.
I mean, I've been doing this for 12 days, so I would give them time to find me. The other thing is I have this little effects box here, so if I want, I can start lowering my voice. And then, hey, here, we're on radio too. So,
speaking of Uncanny Valley,
that was going on in the chat. Yeah. Someone was
Yeah, I think someone was talking.
someone was asking us if you sing, and I think you definitely play, like, you play the violin,
I
fiddle,
play the
fiddle.
in fact, I no, I just recently got the recording of the first like public singing performance that I'd done since high school,
Really?
uh, where it was the song that you and I had been talking about, and this was in like a London comedy performance by a show that like Matt Parker
Oh,
does.
the stand up
Um,
maths. What's his tour called?
so the tour is called Festival of the Spoken Nerd,
Okay, yeah.
but every month they do this show in London called An Evening of Unnecessary Detail, where it's kind of where they sample out their material and they also invite a bunch of guests and such. And it's just like a nerd night comedy thing.
Hmm.
And they emphasize to me that, especially if they invite academics, it doesn't have to be like someone trying to crack jokes the whole time. And sometimes that falls a little more flat with the audience in comparison to just like giving an interesting talk that's like mildly
Yeah.
entertaining. So I tried to go about it framing where for the first half of it, it like looked like that was just what I was going to do, is like just give a talk that was, meant to be entertaining, but not, cracking jokes, haha, funny type thing. But then by the end of it, I was just like on a guitar singing some things. And I'm not as good a singer as you per se,
Well,
but
because we've been bouncing around this idea for this one parody for like I don't know, when did you first send it to me? It was like at least a year ago.
probably like 2 years ago. I don't, because I feel like I sort of like sat on the first time when I was like, oh, this first verse feels like it matches enough with the original song and like has some, it's not just like funny, but it's sort of like interesting content that it points to in math.
Yeah.
But it's not something I'd like thought about that seriously for a while, except basically whenever I'm in conversation with you, because you just remind me of like comedic parodies of scientific stuff. It like pops back into my mind. I'm like, oh yeah,
A very
wonder
very
if I'll
very
ever do something like that.
contextual interest. It's like, oh, Tim's here.
Super
Now I
contextual.
care about this specific project again.
But then when Matt asked me like if I wanted to be a guest and their like evening of unnecessary detail, I'm like, well, I don't exactly, I feel good with live performances in the sense of giving a talk. I don't at
Mm.
all feel comfortable doing like a stand-up routine. That's just, I could try to learn, but it's definitely more outside the
That feels like
wheelhouse.
a thing
But
like stand-ups usually talk about, like, like in my fifth year I started to get okay at this.
right, it's not going to go well on the
That's
first
a
night,
little bit
that's for sure.
stressful. Yeah.
But I'm like, music, like I've definitely performed before in like public environments, even if it's been like a little bit of a while. And I feel like if I mixed that with math talk, and it was super fun. It was just like the most fun I'd had in a while
Yeah.
to like do that
If
show.
you want, do you want to
Um,
send me those lyrics? Because like, if you want to like send me an email real quick, we could try to like
yes.
do it at some point on this stream. Like, I'll try to do my rendition. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sally Lepage sent me a DM of like, she did a, what was it, the one of the Lion King songs about like sexual selection and sexual competition, which involved me. So I ended up reading these things and trying to sing them live, which included phrases like barb-shaped penis that I hadn't thought that I was gonna sing until I got to that precise line. Which made for a
Well, so
funky
okay,
moment.
what might be hard about this one, I'll send it to you. The intent of it is definitely that it's associated with visuals.
Okay.
Um, and so for example, there's like pronoun usage. Uh, let's see, like each integral up on the left is a line in there, which if you're not looking at them makes zero sense.
Right.
But at the same time, you're not going to be able to convey that information without like a visual. You're not going to put it into the lyrics, like the integral of sine of x over x, and like going on for a while.
Yeah, it
Um,
depends how you want to do it. Like, I've definitely found that parodies are much easier since I've started thinking them as like necessarily multimedia. Like,
right.
yeah, because I can use all these shorthands. Like, here's a thing, and then show the thing, and not have to.
So
Yeah.
I can also try to. I mean, I don't know how good it would be to like send you the slides as well. Uh,
I don't think I'm capable of putting them up. Uh, if you could try to
but
screen share, but I'm afraid that if you screen share, you're gonna like crash my streaming software. So
all right, I won't try it. But you'll have the lyrics. You can work with it as you will.
yeah.
And you can get rudimentary images to like convey what's going on if you just Google the relevant things
Mm,
and like you pull up whatever comes up on Wikipedia. You can kind of like, this is the thing that verse is about.
yeah. We have people. This is a question. Um, some is it King Gaming is asking how old you are. which I think,
Oh yeah, I'm 65.
yeah, I think relates to a different, like, kind of more meta problem with you that, like, before I met you, I had the same thing. It's like, this disembodied, like, math god who speaks over nice, soothing meditational music and explains to me the mysteries of the universe. Do you get that a lot where people are like, "Oh, you're a person"?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's the podcaster effect, I
Yeah.
think, where any podcaster you listen to, you don't know what they look like, but your mind conjures an image.
Mhm.
And often that image is based on like stereotypes in the given context. So I think because of like a lot of the stuff that I'll talk about, I try to make it not a level per se, but if you're going to like say what level of math in this is this, it ends up being a little bit more college than it is high
Yeah, for
school.
sure.
And because a lot of people's memory of like their college math professor is like older, bearded, balding, just like quintessentially professorial,
Yeah.
I think their mind just like links to this certain assumption about what someone who's teaching them math like that looks like, uh, totally independent of I think objective qualities about.
Yeah. I think that's
I don't
true.
know, like
And
using the base rate of like what's the typical age of someone who posts YouTube videos or something like that, right?
yeah. And I think there's like, I don't know, you have a voice that is kind of ageless as well. Like I don't know how much, I actually don't know how much voices actually like correlate with age, or how much of that is like perception, because we always see someone with their
I think it's
voice.
people have claimed that I have like an older sounding voice,
Mm.
but I don't think that's. I think that it's just that there's like a perception of what they assume I look like, and then they link the voice with what they assume I look like, and then
Yeah.
that's why
And
they
it's,
like think
and
that the
like
voice is.
part of the sound of that is also like your tone, and how, like, how confident you are and how calm you are and how much you know your material, which is all things people associate with like a particular, I don't know, demographic, age bracket type thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
Oh, here it is. Should we? You want me to try this? What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, give it a shot. Like again, I
Yeah.
don't know if it makes sense without the visuals, but I'd love to hear you.
Okay.
I'd love to hear you
Uh,
go for it. I'm certainly not going to sing it here, so
can
but
you hear? Can you hear the keyboard that comes through? You can hear all that.
yeah, perfect.
Um. Yeah. Okay. So this is uh. Let's get some reverb on the voice. Hey. Should I do it like Leonard Cohen style or more like Jeff Buckley style?
If it was me, I'd go Jeff Buckley, but like Leonard Cohen is weird to me,
Yeah.
and I think it would be all the more funny to hear you do it in that
I
way.
actually don't know his, like, I don't know. I think it would be weird. I don't think I have his voice at all.
It would be very.
All right, let me just try to do it like me. It's probably easiest. Oh, I heard there was a pattern of chords that split the circle. It starts 1, 2, 4. Endpoints seem to cut in powers of 2, yeah. It goes on like this with the 4th and the 5th, but something's odd when you add the 6th. It cuts in 31, yeah, patterns fool ya. How they fool ya. How they fool ya. How they fool ya. How they fool ya. How am I doing? When your faith is
This is
strong, you
one of the
still need
greatest
a
things
proof.
I've ever heard.
When extrapolating, you're liable to goofs. Each integral on the left is pi over 2, yeah. You think it's true for the next, which is fair, like a joke we've shown that's off by a hair. It's a subtle slip, but it's true. The pattern fooled ya. How they fooled ya. How they fooled ya. How they fooled ya. How they fooled ya. Need to scroll down. Should I do the key change? Yeah.
let's modulate.
Take a prime, convert to base 4, then read those digits as you'd have before. One prime gives a new prime with this new rule, yeah. Or does it though? You'll eventually find new primes are not so simply designed. Patterns hold and then they're broken. Yeah, they fool ya. How they fool ya. How they fool ya. How they fool ya. How they fool
That was extremely good.
Oh, that was fun.
Man.
That's like these lyrics, they work. They work. I remember the first version you sent me. I was like, there's some questionable syllabic decisions here. And now I'm like, oh yeah, you got there. You made it happen.
I think the ones I'm proudest of are like if you the like subtle slip lining up with like from her lips, and then like instead of cold and broken, it's like patterns hold. What is it?
Patterns hold and then they're broken. How they yeah.
Maybe that one needs a couple syllables lost from it, but like somehow getting the hold to really line up with the memory of a hold.
Ballads are fun to play with generally because they have a lot more slip room in general. Like the way people sing them is so like free and off the beat and kind of like putting things in, and you know, like you don't want to be robotic with the ballad. You want to be like expressive. And in a parody, that gives you a lot more leeway because you can, you know, run around the syllables. You can add your little extra bits and stuff. Yeah. Well, there's that thing. I don't know. Chino Hoshi says that was really nice. Thanks, Chino Hoshi. Yeah. So.
Right. Now I'm fine. I was having trouble like making a YouTube post out of this for some reason.
Okay.
And then I realized it was because I was logged into the wrong account.
I do that all the time.
I was like making a post to like the Turkish version of the channel or something like that. Yeah, so my policy with a lot of people want to do translations, and for a while I was like, I don't know what to do with this, because like people would upload them kind of on their own anyway, and I'm like, I like that it's there, but I also don't really like the haphazard policy. So basically it's like if someone wants to do a dubbing, I'm like, that's great, that's awesome. We'll just make a separate channel that's like under like an official 3BLUE1BROWN banner that I have like admin rights to.
Right.
And then we can give you all due credit that you want like on screen and in the description. The best bang for your buck on translations is going to be like translating the subtitles on the main videos, but
yeah,
like dubbing obviously can make it a nicer experience in some people's native language. So yeah, there's a Turkish channel, there's a Czech channel, there's a lot of just random little ones.
I feel like dubbing could do a lot for your videos because it's all like you don't want to be having to read a thing while like scanning back to the complicated animations, right?
Yeah, it's definitely created with the intent that one of your senses is processing one thing and the other sense is processing another thing, and that those aren't collapsing on top of each other. It would work the same for you, right? Like if someone was like trying to read the subtitles associated with
read the subtitles in a different language parody. Yeah, like I don't know, unfortunately I feel like my stuff is kind of like, unless someone wants to take on the burden of like totally rewriting the songs in a way that works, in which case you're basically starting from scratch. Like I don't know, like people do subs of my videos, and actually I'm not actually sure if I've figured out how to turn them on. Like occasionally I'll have someone ask me, hey, where's the Taiwanese sub for this? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, does it automatically come through? Do I have to manually check these things? And if so, how? Because I don't speak Taiwanese.
Oh no, okay, no, I'm glad you're asking. Yeah. You can turn on a setting that makes it such that anyone can contribute and the community can approve them. So if it's like enough independent people say. But
I think that's what's going on, because I know people can contribute. And probably just they're like, if you're in kind of a language that has less of an overlap with my usual audience, maybe there just haven't been enough people in that like Venn diagram of speaks language, cares about this thing, bothers to check. Yeah.
You can review them manually, and basically YouTube shows you the Google translation. It shows you like what you wrote, what the translation is, then the Google translation of
Yeah.
that, so you can tell if it's like spam or
Okay.
not. You can't tell if it was translated artfully or not if you don't speak Chinese.
Yeah.
Um, but I actually think the YouTube tooling is very good on that, and it's very very helpful because like most people watching are not.
Okay, that's good to know.
I don't know about most, but a lot of people watching aren't native English speakers.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's like I do. I don't know. I definitely have troubles with trying, like, even in English. Like, if you're an English speaker, I still feel like I have to put the subtitles in my stuff because there's just like lyrics. Once you know lyrics to a song, they seem completely obvious, and like, how could I have not understood that? But before you know the lyrics to a song, even if it's like someone who's singing fairly clearly, you end up with like
Well, and you're
no idea what's.
it's even
Yeah.
worse in your situation because it's not that people don't know the lyrics, it's that they know the lyrics very well.
Yes.
They just know other
They're
versions, so
battling
their mind is
against,
immediately
yeah, against their previous perceptions. So I do have to put the subtitles down there, but like I because of that, I have now stopped doing any other form of reading on my videos. Like, I used to have like little text boxes and things, or like, you know, if you like paused the video, you could, and that, you know, like, since who was it? Peter, what's his name? The librarian YouTuber. Do you remember him?
I know exactly who you're talking about. Don't know his last name,
Yeah.
but Peter the librarian
Yeah.
YouTuber.
He did this presentation at one of these educational YouTuber things of like, here's the research on multimedia learning, and his first point was like, never have different like don't double and triple query the language processor, basically. If like you've got to be reading here and listening to someone say something else at the same time. It's like you don't actually have three streams like that unless you're like someone who's a professional simultaneous translator, which those people are
I
impressive.
mean, although you can kind of go all the way around with this where things that are harder to consume, like I think they end up being more memorable. Like it's less pleasant, so you probably don't want it on YouTube. But isn't there some research around like when the handwriting is bad or it's like pixelated or something that's making you strain to even consume it, you actually end up retaining it better?
Okay. Yeah, I would believe that to a certain extent, although I would imagine that there's probably like a Venn diagram of like ways that you can make something harder and ways that the making it harder helps you retain it, and they're definitely not overlapped. Like, I've had professors who definitely made it very hard to understand what they were saying, because they wrote completely incomprehensibly and spoke incomprehensibly, and I don't think it aided in my comprehension. like you need to, once you
Sure.
yeah, Peter Musser, Leos is saying in the chat, yeah, that's it. Peter Musser, he's got a channel called, oh, what is his, now I'm forgetting his channel, but you can, if you Google him, that'll be enough. He's like one of those people that very few people know about, but everyone in like the actual YouTube educational community of creators knows about.
Well, it's because, I mean, I think it's because he's such an infectious, it's like he's weirdly proud of libraries.
Yeah.
And it's in a way, it's like, okay, yeah, everyone like YouTuber's pretty into what they're doing. And I'm sure to a lot of people, I'm weirdly into math and such. But in these circles, like to hear him discuss, it's like an unusual level of passion about how underappreciated libraries are and like the value that they serve. And like you'll be having a conversation like off in one corner of a room, and it's like as if he's heard from the other corner a thing that might be relevant. He like pops over, he's like, did you know that the San Francisco library system gives you free access to all the articles in like Nature? And you're like, oh, where did you come from?
I did not know
that was actually very informative and helpful, thank you. Right? And then he's off to like to spread his wisdom to another group and another unsolicited comment in a conversation, and like we love it and it's awesome.
Yeah.
And I've actually never watched any of his videos. If that shines through in his videos, then I imagine there's strong potential for them to be like super entertaining and popular. If it's hard to get over that hump of like people not exactly going to YouTube when they're like seeking to be informed about libraries.
Well, I
don't
yeah,
know.
and I also think that even when people are seeking to be informed on YouTube, there's still like a big clickbaiting component of it, where of the options that you watch, that you're deciding to watch in order to be informed, you're gonna go with like the flashy and like, I don't know, well graphically designed and I don't know, well titled thumbnail. And
Right.
yeah, like people get lost in that. Like I think that's probably one of the reasons why like like Justin from Primer like didn't like stayed buried for like quite a long time. Like given the quality of his content, like I was surprised at, because I think I met him and I subscribed to him and he had like 50 subscribers or something, and I like watched his first things. I was like, this is gonna be huge, and then like was it you that like pushed him into the mainstream, or was he already like kind of
So
rising by then?
yes and no. I can't take full credit here, but here is what
No,
happened.
like no one can
He
take full credit except him because his stuff is genuinely like
Yeah, no,
beautiful.
his stuff is awesome. But I think he had 7,000
Mhm.
subscribers, and then he posted a video about markets. So he had been doing a bunch on like evolution. He
Yeah.
posted on one of markets, and I saw it early on Patreon. I was like, oh, this is pretty good. All of his stuff is great.
Yeah.
I'm like, this one's great, just like everything else. Um, I'm like, oh man, it is a shame that like things haven't quite blown up, because I also knew exactly how much time not exactly. I had a sense of how much time he'd been pouring into it,
Well,
and
because you make
like,
similarly difficult to program content. You have probably some good sense.
and but also he did a crazy thing, which was like, so he was actually my manager at Khan
Hmm.
Academy. Fun story.
It's
So
a.
I left Khan Academy and like,
But by the way, all of YouTube is run by one Khan Academy cabal. Just in
yeah,
case
no, the
people didn't
ex-cons are a
know.
powerful cohort. Um,
There's like the smart
so
YouTube
anyway, just
mafia, and then there's Khan Academy, and they're just dividing up the pie. Green Brothers are in there somewhere.
so he about a year after I left, I think he was getting particularly jaded because more of his job became, I don't know how public this is. Anyway,
Yeah.
he was feeling jaded about his things there. And whereas usually if someone like leaves their job to do YouTube, it's because they have an established channel and they can like clearly see momentum there.
Mhm.
Instead, he was just like, I'm just looking for a new chapter in life.
Yeah.
Just like left, and then started not to make videos, but started to make the tool to make the
That is
videos. I'm
brave.
like, oh wow, that is a crazy
Yeah.
thing to do. Um, so he'd been making a couple and clearly like pouring himself into it. And so when he made the one on markets, I tweeted, but I also did like a YouTube
Mhm.
post, which I hadn't been using that much, and I think it was maybe a relatively new feature. Um, and so I had also recently published a video on my channel, which I think is relevant for reasons I'll get into. So I made the YouTube post, and within a couple, I don't know, within like the first day or something like that, it went from like 7,000 subscribers to 21,000. So I was feeling like good about myself. I'm like, oh, great, I like helped
Yeah.
triple that. And then in the following week, it just like super accelerated,
Yeah.
where within a week it had jumped up to like 250,000, where not both the video that I had like posted, but even more so a different video he made on like simulating natural selection,
Yeah.
just really fell
Once people
into
found
the
one
good
of them, I
graces of
think
the recommender.
that's part of what did it probably, is that when people found one of them, they were like, "Whoa, this guy's good," and he actually had like a substantial
So
backlog for people to boost it.
there's that. I'll tell you what my own theory for what happened
Okay.
is, which is, so when the YouTube algorithm is recommending things, I'm a genuine believer that it's trying its best to just show people what's going to be a good experience,
Mhm.
right? So you have all sorts of YouTubers who complain like, oh, the algorithm screwed me over, or like you have to make good thumbnails to like appease the algorithm. It's like, no, you have to make good thumbnails to like draw people in, because it's about humans.
Yeah.
And like the algorithm is just this reflection of what it is that people want. In a perfect world, the way that that would work is that you feed as an input to a neural network the like hundreds of billions of videos that exist. You try to optimize which one of these is going to give someone the best experience, as measured by like a mixture of watch time and like their answer on a post video survey and various things like that. And then it'll be able to choose the best from like the hundreds of billions of videos for you.
Yeah.
Computationally, to do that for every possible user is like totally infeasible. So instead, what you have to do is have a like very cheap nomination phase, where of the hundreds of billions of videos, it suggests like 4,000 or something on that order that you're feeding into the neural network for it to even do its machine learning on,
Hmm.
right? And so the nomination is going to come from things
Because
like,
this thing has from the time you decide to go on YouTube until it has to decide what videos to put in front of you, what does it have? Like half a second? to do that.
Something,
Yeah.
but I mean, it could also be mulling it over like while you're watching a video or something, and it it can be like doing calculations about you.
True. Yeah.
It doesn't have to do it live. Then I don't know enough about exactly how it works, but the idea that there's two phases, like nomination and then actual machine learning, that is probably a pretty valid assumption. And so the sort of things that are going to go into nomination, it's like, are you subscribed to the channel? That'll make it something that it's like maybe even considering. Or have you watched things from this channel before? Or I think one of the biggest ones is going to be like a notion of like, if we look at the videos that you've watched and then other people who have watched those videos and what videos those other people have watched, let's draw a line between those.
Yeah.
Because like if I watch a video from 12 Tones and I like it a lot, and I also watch a video from Acapella Science and I like it a lot, then when someone else watches a video from 12 Tones, it's like YouTube should know that like Acapella Science might be in this person's interest if there's enough others out there like me that are drawing that line more strongly. So
yeah, that seems likely
I suspect
to be,
what happened.
like, even Amazon makes that explicit. People who are looking at this are already looking at these other things. Would you like to go and see them?
Yeah,
it's a good metric.
So I think with Primer, it's like it's super quality content. If it was being nominated for people, they would like watch it and love it. But below a certain threshold, it's just like how is it possibly getting into that first phase where you can even do machine learning on it? I think when I posted it, it put it in the co-watch graph for a lot of 3BLUE1BROWN content, and they're like kind of similar aesthetics.
Yeah.
And then I think once you have a sufficient mass of that, then you're like exposed to the co-watch graphs of all sorts of things, and then it can tailor it even better to whomever. So like all of the kindling and fuel was because of just like the quality and effort that like Justin had put in. But I think it absolutely would have blown up at some point, but to maybe like help spur it along a little bit earlier. Like,
yeah, it's like an isolated node in a connected network that's looking for connections, and then if you connect it to that entire network, all of a sudden it's part of the that whole like ecosystem. Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense. The Math Nerd gave us
it could have also been
the Math Nerd gave us super chat. Thanks, Math Nerd. He says, "Wow, I don't know if that's a reference to something."
It's a reference to Vihart. Well, it's funny. So Vihart, I assume it's a reference.
Okay.
She made this video all about a number that she called WOW.
Okay.
WAU. That has like a lot of really like
I think
crazy
I remember
properties
that.
that like shows up on all sorts of like identities, and like it's a very universal thing. I don't even want to spoil the punchline, but it's a very funny video, and it's all about this number WOW, which is not 6.28, but I don't know if that was what they're referencing. Highly worthwhile Vihart video.
Oh, I didn't even realize that it was 6.28. But thanks, Math Nerd.
Someone asks for my E to the pi I poem.
You have one?
So let me. Oh, of course.
Do you have it memorized?
I have lots of math poems. I can read it for you.
Oh, I could give you like background music.
Oh, for like a
yeah.
What? Oh, there we go. Okay, I have to find it. I don't have it memorized, unfortunately. Famously start with E. Raised pi with an I. We've been taught by a lot that you've got -1. Can we glean what it means? For such words are absurd. How to treat the repeat of a feat pi I times. This is bound to confound till your mind redefines these amounts one can't count which surmount our friend E. Numbers act as abstract functions which slide the rich 2D space in its place with the grace when they sum. Multiplied, they don't slide, acting a second way. They rotate and dilate but keep straight that same plane. Now what we write as E to the X won't perplex when you know when you know it's for show that X goes up and right. It does not, as you thought, repeat E product E. It functions with gumption on functions on the plane. It turns slides side to side into growths and shrinks both. Up and downs come around as turns round, which is key. This is why pi times I, which slides north, is brought forth, and returned we have learned as a turn halfway round. -1 matched by none turns this way, hence we're done. Which again makes 10 times more sense if there's visuals associated.
I would imagine. Like I have to say that when I'm improvising, I'm about 65% just trying to make sure that I get the right notes. And the speed with which you did that poem greatly exceeded my ability to process it. So someone is going to have to tell me if without visuals that made sense. It definitely for me.
I don't think it did.
Okay.
I don't think it would have for me if I didn't have visuals. But
do you have a series of these poems?
I feel like 5 years ago, I just like wanted to, and they're not like poems in the sense of like high quality poetry, but in the sense of very constrained, like following iambic pentameter, or just like trying to follow a certain very specific rhythm and rhyming pattern. I just found fun. So
Proper sonnets and such.
Yeah. So like
You want to do
I've
another
got
one?
sonnets about. Yeah, I'll read you a sonnet.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple choices. What do we have in the sonnet category? We have all numbers are interesting.
Okay, you said if you read a sonnet of yours and then send me one.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
gonna try to set it to music. I think that might be a good challenge.
Here,
We've got.
what's the best
By the way,
email for
lots
you?
of people in the chat are complimenting your poetry skills. So
Oh, that's sweet of them.
feel good about
All right,
yourself.
I'll send you one, and then we can go with invention versus discovery
Okay.
as the one that I'll read off. I think this is one that's a sonnet. Yeah. Oh, there's also one about Tao, everyone's favorite. Good sonnet about Tao.
Okay.
I don't know, what do people think? Invention versus discovery or Tao?
Are you sending me whichever one they don't pick? Am I getting the?
I've already sent you.
Ooh. Okay.
All numbers are interesting.
Aha. Come on, Gmail inbox. Refresh at a suitable rate. There we go. A little vibration in my pocket.
I'll just go with invention discovery.
Okay. Whoa, this is like
That seems simple.
is this like a double sonnet?
Well, yeah, I guess maybe I'm using the term sonnet loosely, but we've got two different.
Let's see. You've got
whatchamacallits.
You've got 10. Yeah.
I think I've sent you sonnet. Yeah.
Yeah.
It goes A B A B C D C D E E.
Yeah. I think a sonnet is 14 lines, isn't it? Generally, it's.
What am I writing then? What are these?
I'm not sure. So this is it's iambic pentameter, and you're doing A B A B C D C D E E. I don't know. It's like a truncated sonnet. There's probably like an actual word for it. But I think generally sonnets were like they were either like A B A B A B A B C D C D E E, or they were like A B B A A B B A C D D C E E.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. But I mean,
there exists some name for this structure. I'm not. It's also like iambic.
Okay.
What are they called? So someone will know.
Hold on. I'm gonna try to do this one. And put on the reverb again. And let's see. Okay, what's the emotional tone of this sonnet before I start to read it? If you had to pick something.
Whimsy.
Whimsy. You're gonna make me want to do like a like what levels of whimsy are we talking about here? I feel like we could go too far with it.
Between Leonard Cohen and what you were just doing, go like 70% of the way there.
All right. Let's try something like that. That's pretty generic, but I know it works. Is any number that we count but now, and lacking in one feature we might note. Suppose some are, and gather up them all. This is harder. The smallest one is quite the cause to gloat. Where are we? It is precisely how far one must count before the numbers get uninteresting. But this would be a curious amount, which contradicts how we define the thing. So every number has something to show, excluding ones whom we will never know. Let's see if this joke proof applies as well to real numbers. Do of do they all stand out? Is there a oh dear. Suppose some don't, and mind one who rebels by being meaningful beyond a doubt. Before it was the smallest who amused, but real sets made like a minimum. Will there be a special one to choose from subsets of the whole continuum? It isn't clear where such a choice comes from, yet some treat choice like it's an axiom. Wow.
Given the as I was looking at it, I'm like, oh, I don't necessarily think that follows the meter perfectly. I think that was crazy impressive.
It follows that was an iambic tune. What are you talking about?
No, I was criticizing the writing, not the
okay.
singing.
No, it was mostly like, it's probably because when you're thinking of these things, you can usually stretch the word to make it work. But then if you're reading it for the first time, you have to know how the word is supposed to be stretched.
Right. Right. It's like from subsets of the whole continuum.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not usually how we emphasize continuum.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, especially contractions like isn't, where you got to be like, I don't know. And there was one word in there. I think it was curious, where I think I said it as 2 syllables and then realized it was supposed to be 3, or vice versa. I don't
Curious.
know. Yeah, curious.
Curious.
Because you could you could be like cure yes or curious.
Curious. I'd never even thought about that being a 2-syllable word.
I don't know.
Like a southern accent.
I don't think it's common, but the brain does do weird things while trying.
Wait, someone claims to have gone to high school with me.
Whoa.
And they were in my orchestra class. Oh, cool.
Do you remember someone named
Hi,
Tamara Lynn with multiple A's?
I don't remember the multiple A's, but certainly. Hello. Hello again.
Hello. Hi.
She's providing evidence that I at least once did something musical in my life.
Oh, I see. So were you in orchestra? Was that when you were playing the violin, or were you playing something else?
It was violin, yeah. So like school orchestra is like sort of an obvious thing you'll do, but then there was also like Utah Youth orchestras, where there was one called like Utah Youth Symphony, and then another that's like an all-state thing. And there were just various like youth orchestra things that I'd be a part of.
Utah.
But a lot of what I did actually was like just more fiddly, and so I would do like street performing with my brother.
Okay.
So we grew up in Park City, and
where's Park City? Is that's in Utah?
It's in Utah. Are you familiar with the Sundance Film Festival?
I'm not more familiar with it than any other film festival, which is to say that
Okay.
I know that it exists, and sometimes I see it on the backs of DVD cases saying this
Great.
won something at
It
the
exists,
yeah.
and it's hosted in Park City, and that means that there's a time when just a ton of like tourists are in town, and they're just like wandering up and down Main Street, not entirely sure what to do with themselves, as many tourists are.
Okay.
So my brother had the genius idea that we should just go out, case open, throw a couple seed dollars in, and like, busk.
I love that like even just that's like something that most people who haven't busked don't think about, the seed dollar thing.
Seed dollars are critical. Yeah,
you can't. No one throws $1 in an empty guitar case. They assume you're terrible.
And actually, counterintuitive fact is that you can extrapolate that. I would have thought the fuller a case is, the less people want to put something in it, because they're like, oh, you've got enough in there.
Yeah.
I think the way it actually works is the fuller it is, the more it normalizes the premise that like throwing cash into the case is the thing people do.
Yeah.
So dear buskers out there, like, don't empty your case too hastily.
So did you experiment with that in terms of like, we're going to start with 5 seed dollars, or like 100 seed dollars, or like, we're going to put a couple 20s in there, like really obviously? Because I've thought about it. Like, I don't know if that works so well in America, but in Canada, we have like really colorful money. So like, if there's a 50 in there, it's going to be like this bright red, shiny plastic thing that people will...
It might not be as flamboyant as in Canada, but you will notice if there's a 20.
Yeah.
It's just like a different enough looking bill. Our standard was a single 5 and 2 1s for seed money, which probably wasn't very scientific. I bet we could have like tuned that more deliberately and done a couple actual experiments.
I mean, occasionally, sometimes if you're a busker, it's like, it's just, do I have any money? And then Well,
Exactly. Yeah,
what do I have from
yeah.
yesterday? I don't know. How much did you make when you were on the street?
During Sundance, it was great. It was like, I don't know, it was on the order of like $100 an hour, I think,
Nice.
because there's just like a lot of people with like cash flush
Yeah,
pockets wandering around looking what to do.
feeling
The
rich.
problem is that Park City in January is like frigid, and it's not easy to play an instrument that requires a lot of dexterity when it's just like blistering cold outside.
Yes. Yes,
So
very
we
much.
do what we could, where we had like fingerless gloves that had hand warmers in the back, like on top of the where like veins were,
Mhm.
which kind of like helped blood flow. And also I think helped give it a little bit more of a Oliver Twist orphan look, because we were kids. So when you have like fingerless gloves and you're like on the street playing violin, maybe that adds to the sympathy
Yeah,
component.
that helps. But steel strings are literally the worst for playing out in the cold. Like it's just like
Yeah,
you've got this
like
long one-dimensional object with way more surface area than volume, and you're like
yeah.
it's never going to warm up no matter how much you play it, and it just takes all of the heat directly from your fingers. Like I used to play like acoustic guitar out in the middle of winter in Montreal sometimes, and that's yeah, no, it's not pleasant. Your fingers get very very hard. Like for guitar,
I
eventually you find that like there's three chords you can still play, like because
right.
you've kept the flow in those particular formations, and everything else is like no, no, this isn't happening.
I could see that. What was much more enjoyable was like arts festivals in the summer,
Mm,
even if those had didn't have the same like foot traffic necessarily. You could be, it was like it was less painful and you could stay out for much longer.
mm. I didn't do the seed dollar experiment, but I definitely like did accidental social experiments about like which sort of groups get
Hmm.
get more money. Like it's amazing the difference it makes to have like a small woman with you playing music compared to like because
Interesting.
if you're a guy playing guitar by yourself in a subway, you're one of those guys who hasn't got his life together and is banging out on a guitar in a subway. But if you do the exact
Sure.
same thing with like a woman singing harmonies, then you're this like adorable couple who are out together romantically trying to make their way in the world. And it's like it's the difference
Hmm.
between like $5 an hour and $50 an hour sometimes. It's really
I can see
impressive.
that. I can see that.
Yeah.
Um, Pop covers also, it's just like 100% the way to go.
If you do it right, you have to do something that's like
Hmm.
interesting to people and doesn't make them despise you for the fact that you're playing that busker song that everybody always plays.
Yeah, don't do like Wonderwall or
Generally, did you do pop stuff or did you do like jigs, and like more like fiddle
a
things?
mixture, but we would do pop stuff. So oh God, I wish I could remember more easily. What is Love was definitely like kind of a fun
Wait, what
one.
does your brother
And, like,
play?
it was also violin, so it was like a violin duo.
Okay.
So obviously at that point you're not just doing like the standard, because it's not even lyrical.
Yeah.
So the sense in which someone recognizes it is purely from the melody. It gives all sorts of room for creativity on the arrangement,
So was
where
it
it's
was it
like,
like
how
one
do
of
you
you
have
doing
two
like the,
violins? Yeah,
and then the other
exactly.
one is doing like the whatever, like that kind of thing?
Yeah,
Okay.
and but you could have like, it wouldn't just be those two. You could have like five or six things matching those chords that like mimic what the song is that you can go into.
Yeah.
And I would often just have fun with the arrangements where portions of it wouldn't even be specific to the song. It was just like, from that chord pattern, what are some like neat things you can do on the violin
Yeah.
that just give it a nice sound.
It's like a
So
you
if
could have like
anyone
a
knows,
modern day Paco Bell's canon out of what is love.
yeah,
Variations
you
on a
absolutely
theme.
could.
Yeah.
One of my all-time favorite groups that's like small number of stringed instruments is Time for Three,
Hmm.
where they're total geniuses. And when they do pop covers, so they have one for Firework, like Katy Perry's Firework,
Okay.
that definitely after the stream or even during the stream, that maybe wouldn't make sense, but like it is highly worth your time to watch it because it's so good, just as like a musical accomplishment. And then I haven't found a good recording of it, but I saw like there's a lousy recording of them playing it live on YouTube somewhere. Um, oh God, it's what's that very famous U2 song?
I don't know. There's a bunch of them.
There's a bunch.
And yet I'm blanking on every single one. Beautiful Day. That's like their comeback one, but like their big one's Sunday Bloody Sunday.
Oh, With or Without
With or
You.
Without You. There you
My
go.
brother's just like trolling around in the back of my
Sweet.
living room.
Hey.
I guess listening in.
Uh,
Yeah, I guess I didn't mention to him that I'd be doing this.
yeah, that's one of those classic 4-chord songs. With or
Yeah,
without
exactly.
you. Yeah.
In fact, do you know the like the Axis for Awesome sort of comedy bit where they
Yeah.
like this one of these classic parodies of like the 4 chords
Yeah,
thing.
I was talking about that with Corey on Monday, because he's getting really into like chord loop theory. So like, how do you? Because it doesn't really make sense a lot of the time to analyze chord loop like modern pop songs like with classical music structures. Like even things like what key a piece of music is in a chord, like in a song with a chord loop is like kind of ambiguous a lot of the time. So like for example, there's a like Sweet Home Alabama is like the classic one that like the music theory community argues about. Like if you do like
For like what key it's
yeah,
in?
like Sweet Home Alabama. Right. So is it in D and then falling there and then going back to here, or is it starting in like the dominant chord and then this is where you land? So
I would say the latter if it was just me, but I'm like definitely
so
not
this is one of
a
those
music
like
theorist.
one of those Laurel Yanny dress hot dogs a sandwich type things where like you ask a room full of people and they're almost perfectly divided. Like I always hear it as in the key of D. So as but the truth is it doesn't really.
But that's the tension. That's like the tension that needs resolution. You're not starting like Sweet Home Alabama doesn't feel like it's starting with resolution.
It does though to me. So this is why people argue about this all day. But the truth is that I would say Sweet Home Alabama is in because it starts in like that's the melody. That's very clearly centered on the key of D to me. But if we're doing the exact same chord, which is the chord pattern was werewolves in London or whatever. Werewolves in London. That one's very much in G. And same with the Kid Rock one. Like you were trying pretty things, we were smoking funny things. My favorite song. Like that one is for sure in this key. But I disagree about.
Sounds
the
like you
original.
agree with me.
No, those are the takeoffs of the original Lynyrd Skynyrd song. Corey was arguing that even within the band they seem to disagree because it seems to him that whoever wrote the vocal melody was thinking about it in D, and the guy who plays the guitar solo was thinking about it in the key of G. So, but that's just the thing is like in a lot of chord loop songs, it doesn't really matter. Like there's not this functional harmony idea of like, okay, this is the dominant chord and that means something important. It's more just like you're starting somewhere, you're leading away from it, you're coming back in a way that feels like you can keep going and leading away over again. So how do we get on this topic of conversation? I'm not entirely sure.
Well, actually, I think I was going to try to shoehorn in the fact that one of the last like times I had performed anything like vocal publicly is that in high school I was like, there's like a male beauty contest.
Okay.
There was like this sort of joke that the dancing team of the high school put on, and so people would like vote for different male seniors to like partake in this beauty contest.
I can see you doing well in that. I mean, not to get weird about complimenting.
I got first runner-up. I got first runner-up, and the performance component of it was basically a 4-chord thing that was
okay, Axis of Awesome,
largely just straight up what the Axis of Awesome did, but then like added up on a bunch of different songs and such.
Okay.
And I can't remember why I was trying to shoehorn that in, but it was just maybe on the topic of past relationship.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Weird musical.
Axis
things.
like that chord, like they do a thing in that in their comedy thing where they play with that idea that like what meanings the chords have in that loop depend very much on like the melody and the function, because at some point they go from like as being the thing to which is the exact same 4 chords, but it's just like the perception is it starts on a different place.
And they do it really seamlessly to the point where you don't really realize. But it's but it can totally change how you feel about those chords.
How is there a nice music theoretic way to describe that idea of you can have the same sequence, but like the I don't know which one of them serves as resolution or what the emotional function of each one is changes?
I would suggest that you either look up Philip Tagg's chord loop theory or you wait for Corey to drop his video on it.
Great. We'll go with the wait for Corey
That
option.
would be my suggested answer. Yeah. So do you still play violin much, or have you left that behind?
Much less, probably just because I like live in an apartment and feel awkward about
Oh shoot!
the fact that.
Hold on, I think I accidentally cut you off of visibility. How did I do that? Are you back there? You're back. Sorry.
Yeah, you hear me okay?
No, I did a thing with Zoom that like made your face go black.
Huh,
Apologies.
Yeah, no. Long story short, I don't play it as much actively now and sort of feel bad about that. But I do like mess around on the guitar and piano much more than I used to.
Just like trying things out. Are you got working on any like? Do you write songs? Do you like mess around? Or you do?
I used to again. Yeah. Actually, no. I do write songs. I guess I like write on both. I wouldn't call them like good, but like all the things. On like the essence of linear algebra and the essence of calculus, like the little piano ditties that like intro and outro for those are like things that I wrote.
Oh, cool.
And there's some other like music of the channel that either I wrote or like I wrote a lousy version of, and then Vince Rubinetti, who does all the usual music, like made it better. But
so he's the one that's doing that, like the sort of the general background, like whatever, like the very. I don't know. I feel like your music has like an overall bulbous sort of sound to it, but I guess that's about it.
It is bulbous.
Yeah.
That's him. And I like basically like a long time ago he wrote out, having like followed the videos, and was like, if you're interested in any like sound effects or like background music type stuff, that's something that I do. I was like, oh, I haven't really thought much about that, but like send me a sample.
Yeah.
And then he wrote a sample which ended up becoming the song in the video about the zeta function, which then has just been used in a ton of other ones. And it was like we sort of had a back and forth and like, what am I going for, and wanting the whole function of music, I think, in those videos is to like give a sense of momentum forward.
Yeah.
Which isn't always a given.
Oh, do they actually? Like does it actually like subtly change over the course of your video? Like, is it like a loop, or is it building to something? Because I've never really noticed to that extent.
It's mostly a loop, but it'll like modulate basically. Like after like 2 minutes or so, it like modulates to same melody but like different key.
Okay.
And that sort of gives a sense of like something maybe having subtly changed. And then if I actually want something that's like a scene change, or like we're talking about something very different and like let's emotionally communicate that, then straight up shift what song is being played in the background.
Nice.
But what I've struggled with is like, I think like it's very easy to accidentally make the music distracting instead of like subtly helping with like the momentum. Certainly earlier on, this is like a complaint that I would get. And at first I'm like, is it even worth it to have any? Like maybe just for lectures, like it's purely adding cognitive load.
I don't think so. Like I don't know. Like this is a solved problem in some sense in terms of like, like people who do like film music have figured out how to do music that doesn't, impact you, like that just kind of pulls you along emotionally without distracting you from what's going on.
The goal of film is emotion more so than it is like mathematical content.
But Grant,
right?
isn't your
goal like
emotion also emotion?
Yeah. So insofar as my goal like actually is, and also the polls would agree with you, or when I have actually like straight up polled people on is it better with or without, it's like by far people think it's better with, but the worry would be if like for the minority who don't, it's like a very distracting experience.
Yeah.
Like, it's like a minor benefit for many, but a very big drawback for some.
Yeah, I don't know. Like for me, I've found that it's like it gives the same like that like studying music phenomenon, where like people have better recall and better like when they're like doing a test along with the same music that they studied to the test. And I think there's like there's something in that like you especially being like very consistent in like I don't know if it's the same pieces or if it's just like a very similar like you've got a good style going, but like
Even the different pieces are very similar stylistically.
yeah, and like when I start watching one of your videos, I find that like it's the music that really puts me in that like brain state of like okay, this is a
Sure.
20-minute 3BLUE1BROWN video and I'm like locked in for this. It's like, oh, I'm back in this comfortable sort of warm hypnotic bubbly chair and I'm going to listen to Grant like explain a thing to me. I don't know what it would do.
Maybe
Like
hip
I'd have to see like you'd have to sort of A/B test it for me to see what it would be like otherwise, but I don't know, like I think it's I don't know, everything's better with
Yeah.
music for me, so maybe don't don't judge based
Maybe,
on
maybe it's a
my
biased
input.
audience.
Yeah.
I do think that like less is more when it comes to volume
Mm.
on background
Yes.
music,
It's very
which
easy to
isn't
overdo it.
really the case with like films if you're like trying to have a very like romantically driven scene.
Hmm. That you want it to be subtle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like sometimes the music is like the main source of exactly what you're trying to communicate, which
Mhm.
is
You
an emotional
you should
climax.
try just like one 3BLUE1BROWN video where you do like a Hans Zimmer Inception sort of score. Just see like today we're gonna talk about I don't know, geometric algebra. Bwah!
Wham. Yeah, yeah, very easy to imagine just getting like distractingly absurd with
You
that.
want to, I don't know, like today would be the day. You're going to release like an April Fool's video at some point in your life where you break all of your conventions of how to make a good video and see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll take that suggestion and strongly consider it without any promises of doing anything about it.
Strongly consider, I have a feeling that strongly consider here is a code word.
No, no,
No,
I would
no,
never. I
you
would
would,
never lie about
you would
such
never.
things.
Yeah. I understand. We all understand. Let's see. Do we have anything interesting going on in the? Some people are just putting like math equations in the chat. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what purpose that serves, Molly. Unless there's something there that you understand, Grant, that I don't. There's a question right here at the bottom, arbitrarily sampling for whenever I happen to be looking, which is how did you develop your presentation skills, and or were you born with them? Are you just you're just an innately gifted math prince sent from us on high to?
So in general, on like the nature nurture debate, I'm definitely hard on the nurture side. Like
Okay.
giftedness doesn't really exist. Like
Mm.
it's usually that people have like practiced it in some capacity, or they got into it when they were really young.
Yeah, I tend to believe
Uh,
that most of the things that we consider to be nature are in fact what we learned before we could think about learning. Like
yeah,
that.
but so definitely in the like the 0 to 5 age
Yeah.
range, like things so early they might as well be nature. But also I think like in the 5 to 15 region, like how people spend their time or what they're doing can be uh like heavily influential. So as far as I don't, it's funny, the person that's asking about like presentation skills,
Yeah.
there's a very big difference between writing something and then editing a video on top of it and like a live presentation.
Yeah.
These are very different skill sets, and it's not at all a given that they would come hand in hand for
Yeah, I
anyone.
wanted to
And I
ask you
think for a
about
long
that
time,
because your TED Talk went really well, but it's like the first I don't know, have you done a lot of like live stuff before that?
um, not as much as a lot of others, but like it's definitely I've given at least a dozen
Mm.
talks, right?
Yeah.
That are kind of a similar vein, where it's just a talk about math and visuals and like principles behind learning. And but I also would try to just practice or like really think through what will make more or less effective delivery. When I looked back at the TED Talk, there's definitely things that I was like, ooh, I kind of wish I had done things a little bit differently, or more rehearsal would have made that better.
Mm.
And I think just being able to constantly keep note of stuff like that, rather than like once you've done something, be like, "Phew, that's behind me. Let's not think about that again."
Let me not
Like, because
analyze this
otherwise,
again until 5 minutes before I have to do it the next time. Like,
yeah, exactly.
that's a thing that I've found myself doing with my academic. Like I have this academic presentation that I sort of give about my YouTube channel and like the more general theory on how you construct a parody and like how you how you put science into like a story structure and like a musical emotional structure and whatever. But I found that like there was a peak of quality. Like the first time I did it was rough. The third time I did it, I think was my best one. And like luckily I actually that one that was actually filmed pretty well. So I think eventually I'll like put it on this channel and people can like see that version. And then since then there's kind of been a decline in its quality because I have this sense that I know it now, and then I go up and realize that, oh, wait a second, I do not in fact know this as well as I was hoping.
It never hurts to actually like on the night before or the morning of actually talk it through,
Yeah.
even if you've done it like many times before. Invariably that will make things like go better, which should go without saying, but at the same time, when you're super familiar with something, you feel like, yeah, I know
Well,
this, I got
it's
this.
just
You
super
can just do it off the
easy
cuff.
to like put yourself in an overconfident like, oh, I've done this a million times, I got it. And then like take away a part of the routine that allowed you to actually have it well.
Yeah. But I also think a key there is I hope I get better at, because I don't think I'm like great at it, but when I see people who do it well, it's like awesome. Being responsive to the audience, like letting things be a little bit flexible enough where you can be reactive and kind of like funny and all of that based on the vibes that you're getting from them. So like Matt Parker is just outstanding at this. And anytime I see him do a live performance, I come away feeling like I just want to be like you when I grow up.
Yeah.
But it's also because he's been doing it for like years and years and like does it all the time.
Yeah, he's a genuine stand-up, and like
and it's like the way he got into it was he took like a stand-up class. He was like a math teacher, then he took a class on stand-up comedy, not intending to become a stand-up comic, like loved it,
yeah.
loved like sort of the theory of it, on like, okay, let's really decompose what makes a joke that works versus what makes one that doesn't, and like nerded out on that, as opposed to just kind of mindlessly doing it without thinking through what works and what doesn't. So
it's interesting that
if
that's
you have
possible.
someone who's, I think it's possible with everything. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole, I mean, I'm reading a book right now that was recommended by, do you know Mithana of the channel Looking Glass Universe?
I have never talked to her. I've watched some of her stuff, but I don't know her personally, no.
So she recommended this book called Peak that's just basically about like expert performers in various domains, whether that's like chess or like runners or whatever else. And the whole theme of it is the benefit of deliberate practice over just like putting in the time. And saying like with a lot of skills, let's say you want to learn the guitar, right?
Yeah.
Your first couple weeks, there's just like a ton of improvement because you're going from like not even knowing how to play a chord to being like very comfortable playing like a G chord to like swapping between them to whatever like picking and fingering patterns you want. But once you get to the point that you can like play some songs that kind of sound good, it's very common to just totally plateau because the time you put in is spent playing songs rather than pushing to the boundary and improving.
Yeah, and that's true at every stage after that. I found like I'm kind of at this stage in the guitar where like I can noodle semi-effectively, and so when I pick up a guitar, that's what I do. I'm like I'll put on like a jam track or whatever and like mess around. But every time, like it's amazing how much you can fool yourself in terms of like I do like a year of one thing and I don't see any improvement, and then I spend a day focused on like I'm going to find some new scales to learn, some new like I'm going to be methodical about this, and then my noodling is somehow all of a sudden way better. And it yeah. So I think I would agree with that.
And the whole conclusion of the book is, one, there's a huge difference between deliberate practice and like simply putting the time, and two, there's no limit to what humans can do. Like it ends up becoming genuinely insane as you just like, if you take that deliberate point that like what you were just describing, where on that one day of a year when you're pushing for something different, if that's what you do all the time in your practice sessions, like it's just crazy how good humans get at things. And the example that he opens with is, he was a psychology professor and they were doing these experiments on short-term memory, and they had this guy who would come in and they would like read off digits at a pace of 1 every second and then see if he could recall them back. And common wisdom has it that our short-term memory, we can load about 7 to 9 digits, that if you just hear them at that pace, that you'll be able to reliably respond back like in order consistently. And even that's kind of hard, but like you do it a little bit and you'll be able to do somewhere in the 7 to 9 range. Um, but like long story short, after like being very deliberate about thinking on how he was doing it and like changing the modes of thought and everything, he was able to push past that point and like reliably do like 15 digits where someone's just saying them one at a time,
Hmm.
and then got up to doing like 20 digits and 25 digits. And just it just didn't stop the more he did it, but he was also very conscious of what the mental structures were and like changing them from one phase to the next, and going from 25 to 30 was like qualitatively different than going from 30 to 35. But he got to the point where he could do 82
Wow.
reliably. So imagine just like speaking off at 1 per second a digit for like 82 seconds,
Yeah.
and then he just like reads them back
And you're
perfectly.
codifying,
Um,
you're just like codifying them in your mind as it happens, and you've built this kind of this house to structure and put them in, and then you go and find them again. I wonder if that, like, do you know if that was something that improved his overall memory, like outside that specific task, or is it like you
no,
only get better at the
that's
precise
another.
thing you practice?
Yes,
Yeah.
that is another conclusion of it. It's like these sort of elite things end up being very context specific.
Hmm.
And as much as you'd like to think, oh, you're buffing up your general memory abilities, it's like, no, what you might be doing is buffing up your ability to deliberate practice and recognize what it looks like to improve
Yeah.
when you do try to get better at something else. But like being able to spew out 82 digits is not making you like remember historical facts better or anything like that.
Yeah, for anything that
Um,
isn't that particular task, you'll probably be back down to like the 7 to 9 range, I would guess.
yeah.
That's like that's something that feels. I've been trying to figure out how you would do that with a creative venture, right? Where there isn't a there isn't a textbook, and there isn't like if you're doing something specific to you, which I think is more and more the way that I don't know, the way that one makes things that are new and interesting in this world. Like you have to push it into some place where people haven't been. Like, and
I
especially
can
with
jabber off another anecdote from the book
okay, yeah,
to
go
that
for it. Maybe
effect if
you'll
you.
you'll go past my point into what I was trying to say.
Well, no, actually, don't let me stop you. You finish your point, and then I'll.
Well, my question is like if you have your own art and you're trying to improve it into a better thing, but it's specific to you, it's like you need you need to start with your intuition, I think. Like a lot of people have this idea of what is good, and that like as a musician you'll kind of mess around and stumble. Like you can learn with you, like if it's something that many people have done, you can do it with theory that's pre-established. But if it's something like say making a 3BLUE1BROWN video, like you don't have a manual for how to do that, really. You have some side principles. But there's something also about like recognizing this is something I really like intuitively, and then switching yourself into complete like unemotional analytical mode. Like now I'm going to correlate all of the like extrinsic perceivable factors of this thing with my previous knowledge of my emotional like resonance with them, and then practice those. And you kind of have to like I've found I have to switch back and forth. I don't know, does that seem fair?
Yeah, well, um, I think oftentimes something, even if it is genuinely novel, it takes pieces from different parts.
Mm.
So, if I mean, as you were saying it, I was like mapping it onto what I do. Um, if I just take any individual piece, like there's a whole bunch of common wisdom and like good performance when it comes to like just giving a good math lesson,
Hmm.
right? People you can take inspiration from and learn from how they're doing it
Yeah.
well. Even if it's not that you're like animating graphics on top of it or doing some visuals first thing. But then there's also a whole bunch of people who just are way good at creating visuals for stuff, and like in the like generative art community, in how to do that like programmatically. And I think like if usually most original things are some mixing mashing of other stuff that exists, like in your case it's like acapella science communication and like all of the video production quality behind it, that each individual piece, there exist experts from which you can
Yes.
um
Yeah.
that you can like analyze and like practice your way to, if not mimicking, then
Yeah,
kind
no,
of
there's a like for me, there's
emulating.
a lot of people like I can if I cobble together like Weird Al and Stephen Sondheim and you and Tirzu and mash them all together in one thing, I can I can I can gain a lot of insights. The novel part for me is like which parts of those are in conflict with each other, and how do you actually mash them effectively into something that that feels like a whole.
I mean, I do think, uh, like, you just sort of know it, I guess. Like, you clearly have like an ability to tell, like, is this a good experience or not?
I
Like,
know it
is
now. I think it's taken me. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 8 years now, 7.5 years. So I think
hmm,
I don't know. I think I found it. I found it accidentally maybe once, but I think I was like the early stuff I did was it was in a different band of enjoyment. Like it wasn't like my two biggest viral hits have been like Bohemian Gravity and like Molecular Shape of You. And I think Molecular Shape of You is like an intentional like teaching teaching tool slash I'm trying to give you like this emotional experience of a particular thing. Whereas Bohemian Gravity is, hey, this kid did something really cool with Bohemian Rhapsody, which everybody loves. And no
right.
one's ever going to understand it or really take a lesson away from it. Like the lesson of it is, hey, look at this nerd. So,
I think you're selling yourself a little bit short there
oh,
on like
fine.
people's
Hey, look
willingness
at
to
this
like pause and
talented
look stuff
nerd.
up.
And also, like, string theory is cool. But
Sure.
I think there was, I don't know, it wasn't intuitive at the start. I wasn't born with it. I figured it out over a lot of iterations, and like you can see kind of in the trough between my first success and my later successes, like all the weird experimental stuff that I did that very much doesn't, I don't know. I look at it and go, "What? I don't know what I was thinking, but it got me from there to here." You know.
Hmm. Yeah.
Did you have what was
But, I
that
mean,
example you were going to give me from Peak?
oh yeah. I mean, it doesn't feel as relevant anymore, but I guess
Backtracking the
Benjamin
conversation.
Franklin, when he was younger, he wanted to like become a better
Mm,
writer, and he wanted to be very deliberate about that. And so on the one hand, like that's a creative pursuit.
yeah.
Like it's not like learning a new chord on the guitar where you say, oh, this is the new chord, it's going to be painful, but I kind of like, this is the day that I'm spending on it. Um, but what he did is he had a magazine whose writing that he thought was particularly good.
Mm,
And uh, what he would do is jot down enough of the content of the sentence of a given article to like know what it was about. But then after he would wait a week, you'd forget the specific wording, and he'd look at his notes and then try to recreate
mm.
what the article said in the like eloquent wording that it did. And then when he looked at the differences between what he wrote and what originally was, trying to contemplate what exactly was different about these.
Mm.
Um, and that sort of is a way to practice on like the creative writing side, the sentence by sentence eloquence half. And then for the structural half, he'd try to compile like a bunch of the ideas and then shuffle them up. And then a week later when he forgot the contents of the article, go and like put them in the same order. It's like, what's the most cogent ordering of these ideas that like puts together a compelling article?
Okay.
And then again, be deliberate about what's the difference here and there. I mean,
So
what's
he's
different
giving
there
himself
compared
like
to,
stepping stones from non-writer to writer.
and crucial there is that it's, I guess, direct comparison with an expert.
Yeah.
And I think the risks there are that someone could complain, oh, you're not developing originality,
Hmm.
because by its very nature, it's very derivative. And that also it depends on it being a field where there exists an expert. Whereas if it was like musical parodies of science, there might not be an expert for that. But on the originality side, there's sort of a difference between like the technical aspect of a craft and then the like original creation side, where everyone agrees, even if you before you can like write a great piano sonata, you do need to have the technical capabilities on like the appropriate fingerings and
Yeah.
uh, all of that. So
Yeah.
uh,
Like
I
there's a similar thing. Sondheim has this story because I think he was friends with either Richard Rogers or Hammerstein, one of the two. I can't remember which one. But he brought this musical theater like master his first musical, expecting that he would say, hey, like that's awesome, you're so great, and like this guy tore him to shreds with it. It was like this is terrible. Like, do you want me to tell you what I really think? It's terrible.
right.
There's so much you need to learn. And he set him this like course of, I think it was like 4 or 5 musicals that he had to write. He was like, all right, first find a musical that you think is not too great and
Hmm.
use all of it, but and just like make it better. Like you can like rewrite the music or rewrite the words, or like whatever you think is poor about it, like make it better. And then you're going to find a play that isn't a musical, but it has all of this structure in it already. You're going to set it to music. And then you're going to find a story that's already been written but isn't a play, and you're going to write it as a musical. And then finally, try to come up with like your original story. Because by that time you'll have worked out like all the fine crafted details of like, here's what words sound nice together, or like give a certain emotional context. You'll know how to like create a rising emotion. Like I think that's whatever way you get it, whether you get it accidentally or not, you kind of have to do that, because people will look at their like idolized masterpiece of a work and try to go directly to that. Like, I'm gonna make my version of, I don't know, Alexander Hamilton or whatever. Like, and then you end up with basically that in low resolution. It's like the exact same thing, but you've missed all of everything that you couldn't yet perceive consciously. Even if you've perceived it subconsciously, and it's really important and everyone perceives it subconsciously, it's just like this blurry facsimile until you get really fine into those details that you never thought about.
Stepping stones. That is a very attentive mentor, I guess. Most people, if they receive, the attempted magnum opus from a young upstart, don't like give them a 10-step plan to greatness.
No, it would be nice.
They just like ignore it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think they were like family friends or something. Like, it wasn't someone randomly off the street. They were like, actually.
It was a warm intro, not a cold.
Yeah, they were
call.
like lived in the same neighborhood or something.
Someone has generously contributed.
Hey.
So as to ask a question.
Arthur Balian, you want to
yeah.
word, Arthur?
Grant, can you please consider making a series of videos that serve as a tutorial on how you make your animations, or at least a real-time recording of your screen as you make the animations?
Ooh, so do people widely know about Manim? Or is that kind of like a secret, or like an open secret of yours that like there's just some sort of barrier to entry of sufficient nerddom to realize that's what you're doing?
Anyone who like wants to ask, it's like it's the first question on the FAQ, but I bet it's not like widely known. So like I have sort of a custom Python. It's unclear if it's a library or an application, which is maybe exactly the problem. But it's like a custom pile of Python code that I'll use to like make animations. At the moment, actually, the thing that's keeping me from doing like, okay, oh, here's how I work with it and exactly how I use it, and like, let me share that with you, is that I'm like making a bunch of changes to what that workflow is and how it works. So if I made it now, like it would be kind of a problem, because hopefully like 2 months from now, it'll be even different and things like that. It'll become much more stable though, not too long from now. And I think when it does, and when I feel good about the clip of like video creation with it, then just doing even just like a screencast of like, okay, I'm in the middle of working on such and such video. Here are the animations I need to do. I'm just gonna like screencast what I'm doing and maybe talk through it a little bit. 100%, I think I'll do that.
Yeah.
Because at the moment it's like definitely a bad, or it's like a steeper learning curve than it needs to be to like get started using it. And for a while, the actual like workflow process was kind of suboptimal, and this is the whole reason like I'm changing it, where it's like less interactive than it could have been. And it worked for me because I kind of got into certain states of, okay, I know how to be efficient about this, but I also know if someone else was just coming in, it's like not necessarily a pleasant process, and I'd like to get more in that direction. So
yeah,
it'll just take a little bit of time, but I will do something about that, and it, most importantly, it will be much better for people in a couple months than it was like a couple months ago.
Are you planning on like putting like a graphical user interface over top of it, or is that a step too far?
Kind of. So I mean, so very low hanging fruit that there was between a couple months ago and like how it works now is that just everything's driven by lines of code. That there should be a very immediate feedback between if you just like type that line of code or copy paste it and immediately seeing what it does, what visual it adds or animation it produces, and just it was just the way that it would output stuff is it would render the final video file and like encode it and such.
Right.
And so like in order to see the effect of something, like, well, let me re-render that video file. And you could like have it re-render just a specific part, but the idea that it wasn't like a live window responding to what you're doing, even if there's no GUI on top of it, is a little bit silly. But on top of that, there are some things that like it makes sense to just have a little bit of a GUI, which the infrastructure is there for that now. I haven't written much of it for it, but it it responds to all the like keyboard and mouse events that you want it to. The problem is like good ways to integrate that with the fact that it also makes sense for a lot of the scenes to be not just like keyframed, but like based on something like the one I just did on like epidemics, where it's like running a bunch of simulations.
Yeah.
You're not going to write that as like keyframes from one thing to the next. It's like, here's the set of rules by which things evolve, and then like the computer is determining like how we move from one frame to the next based on those rules. What's the right way to like integrate that as a paradigm with the like, oh, I just want to like click on this to move it over and expand it kind of paradigm?
Yeah. Do you like when you plan out your videos right now, do you like sketch out like do you storyboard them before you go into the code, or is it more like in your head?
Much more in my head. There's sometimes a little bit of sketching and things like that, but it's much more like I know what the visual should look like, and it's just a matter of like writing the rules that determine what that visual is.
Yeah. Have you ever been really surprised about like, because I can imagine that you could like, since you've got this whole language in your fingertips, you could just be playing around like trying to find, I don't know, like do you always know what it's going to look like before you code it up? Like I imagine like
that's the beauty.
Like the Fourier transform one, it's like that's such a weird, like what did you think that was going to look like before you did it?
I mean, I didn't know what it was going to look, but I knew in principle, okay, you wind it, it does something at the points corresponding to the frequencies that you're trying to extract. It'll be off balanced. Like those are just mathematical facts. Didn't know precisely what it'll look like. And in fact, there's a funny story about the fact that I didn't know precisely what it would look like, because we would always sort of joke around here that like when I'm really stressed about maybe posting a video, you got to make sure that you check that there's not like a penis that's shown up in it or something unexpected, as an example of a thing that obviously wouldn't be in it, but that you'd want to worry for. And then when I posted the Fourier transform video, there was a couple of timestamp where people were like, lol, and joking about the fact that at this timestamp, there was evidently
there was a combination of circular modes like, that you could represent as
and indeed during this like weird winding process for a very specific moment, like the shape that it traced out, you're like, yeah, nope, that all right. I guess that actually made its way into one of my videos without me realizing it. Sometimes the emergent nature of these animations like works against you. For the most part though, it like I think that adds a kind of value, because then it feels like both me and the viewer are like discovering a thing together. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that's what it would look like. Cool.
Yeah. I wonder if anyone, like I asked people in my Discord, which there's a link to down there, if they had
Discord.
Like one thing I asked them is whether they had any questions for you. And the other one was whether like I asked people what their favorite pieces of math are, or like any pieces of math that like they can remember touching them emotionally. So I don't know. I'm gonna see if there's anything here. Aham says super simple, but I recently learned that X% of Y equals Y% of X, and it just about made me cry with delight. That's. Yeah. I think I had that realization at some point. I'm not sure when it was, but like there's a weird tiny little like I do like those moments of like there's sometimes really simple mathematical delights of like I totally should have realized that this was the case like 10 years ago, and for some reason I never did.
Well, yeah, X% of Y is Y% of X seems like a great example of how you can take something for granted.
Yeah.
So in this case, I guess two things. One, percentages, that's just multiplication when he says like something is a percent of something else. But then two, that multiplication is commutative. And it's so easy to say that like, oh yeah, X times Y is Y times X. 3 times 4 is 4 times 3. Yeah. We all learned this. But to step back and be like, that's kind of cool. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's so easy to take for granted that if I have 3 groups of 4, it gives me the same as 4 groups of 3. And on the one hand, it's totally obvious, but when you start to think of, oh, well, how could you visually describe this or something? And if you have like 4 circles with like little 3 things inside and 3 circles with 4 things inside, you're like, that doesn't make it seem super obvious. But if you have a grid and you're thinking of like 4 rows and 3 columns, you're like, oh, it's sort of this idea of transposing. And those sort of exercises of like understanding why it's commutative then start getting you thinking about things like if you see a double sum or a double integral, instead of trying it one way, trying it another, in like much more non-trivial contexts,
Yeah.
the same basic mental process that explains why like multiplication is commutative, then also like makes you a better problem solver. So like to that person who's mind blown by X% of Y is Y% of X, it's because they're like having this, it's so easy to maybe look at the math and be like, oh, that's obvious. It's because we're multiplying numbers 2 different ways.
I think it's also because you sort of like silo concepts into categories, like, and if you don't think about them side by side, you don't make connections. So like I imagine everyone is pretty much aware that 3 4s are the same as 4 3s, and if you ask someone, are 3/100ths of 4 the same as 4/100ths of 3, and you know like they can represent it as like a fraction, then you apply your rules. You're like, okay, well the 4s and the 3s multiply, the 100 stays the same, cool. But people don't like percentages are often in a different category psychologically, I think, because we don't use them as fractions in math class super often, but we use them all the time to talk about whole numbers and like things within broader society. And then like I think you have to explicitly make that connection in your head at some point, that this is that, or you wouldn't even realize it.
Yeah. The compartmentalization point is totally true.
I don't know. Maybe that perception comes naturally to some and not to others. I'm not sure. We got anything else? Questions for Grant?
I think at least if you do another question, I think we would all appreciate another improvisational interlude as a.
So there is a thing at the end of every stream where I have like a theme song, where
Great.
Like we build up a few loops and then we sing about whatever was going on. Like sometimes I sing about random like things that people are asking me to sing about in the chat, like science things. When I was with Corey, I tried to like sing about some of the conversation topics that we got into about music theory. Oh, but the other thing is, you had another poem that you haven't read yet.
Yeah.
I don't know. You want to do that?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Let's give you a. Okay, what's the emotional context of this poem?
You tell me. It's about the question of invention versus discovery.
I don't know. Is it hopeful about it, or like is it interested? Is it despairing over the fact that these two concepts are so readily confused?
It claims to have a kind of resolving idea.
Okay,
so optimistic.
So something very grounded.
That would be yeah, grounded. And you want me to just spoken word this thing?
I mean, I wish you could try to do like a singing, but unfortunately the lag would make that, like, I could give you like a drone chord and then you could sing over it, and that's probably about all I could do, because otherwise we're gonna get like, you're gonna hear it after they hear it, and then we're gonna hear you after you speak. Yeah, no,
I'll just pretend like I've got a half-lit cigarette and we're sitting in like a smoky dive bar.
But if you want to add some notes to it, go for it.
I don't think I'll do that. A lurking question old as Greece does ask, is math invention or discovery? The answer is both, but here the harder task is knowing how it switches. So you see, most truths are found with constructs, which in turn are built from truths, like chicken and their eggs. One needs to know, should this fact raise concern, that constructs can be daft, just logic's dregs. The truths discovered tell how to define the structures that make math and world align. Pythagoras' theorem about lengths is one such truth that he and others found, observed, discovered, and through mental strength that was then proved with pictures that astound. Much later, mathematicians, mind alit, would formalize as sets both length and space, These constructs were defined so that by writ, Pythagoras' truth remains the case. That is, this theorem now seems just defined. As such, one might just lose their peace of mind. So when this world where space is formalized, do all these pretty proofs then lose their charm? Of course not. We all ought to realize how length could change its meaning without harm, to mathematical consistency in all of the theory giving facts of space. However, then these facts would hardly be related to the nature we embrace, and hence a truth has told how to define a structure that makes math and world align.
That was pretty meditative. Oh, that was good. This is your hydration break, guys. If you want to once again take a sip of your water that you've all got with you, just put it up to your lips and give it a big swig.
I've actually run out of water. I'll be right back.
It's hard to do these things for a couple of hours. It's like oh, Grant's gone. Quick, say all the things that you've been afraid to say while he's here in the chat. We could do like a little welcome back to him. Well, waiting for Grant to drink his water now. Grant is done drinking his water now. He's filled it up. He's got a mug. I wanted to ask, like, before we end the stream, I wanted to, like, because I feel like every time I talk to you about things in society, you're thinking, like, not to put you on the spot, but, like, you're generally thinking, like, a couple steps ahead of me, and in terms of where things are going, or like the implications. I don't know. But like, given that you've obviously spent a good deal of time at this point thinking about exponential growths and like epidemiology and whatever else, like, I don't know, do you have a feeling about the world? I mean, that's a little broad, but like when you think about this state of the world that we're going right now, like, where does your brain go? What are the questions that you're concerned with?
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, there's a ton of things there. Do you want my thoughts on like when the pandemic will come to an inflection point, or like what the tertiary effects of such a pandemic are?
I want your thoughts on what the most interesting thoughts about this situation would be.
Okay, so I think one thing that's interesting is that in a very unprecedented way, we're all like banded together against a cause of death.
Yeah.
Right. We're like, really everyone, for the most part, it seems, is like teamed up like, okay, we're going to like do our part. We're like paying a very big cost to do it, to try to halt this potential cause of death. And I'm wondering if after the dust settles, if people then look at what the most common causes of death are, right? And you just say like each day, you know, how many people are dying and what is it because of? If that sense of having been part of this large movement to tackle what admittedly is like a small piece, still very significant, still worth doing, but like it's not the biggest slice of the pie wedge of what kills people, nor would it be even if it got to the like worst case scenarios. Still very much worth slowing its spread.
Well, depending on the numbers, it could, I don't know, what percentage of the population dies every year? It's like it's some
1 divided by the average lifespan.
Yeah, so it's got to be something a little over 1%. So like this does have the capability to like double the death rate of the world in like for a given year.
If nothing was done, and if the mortality rate turns out to actually be around 1%, yeah, totally. But so yeah, definitely a very real threat. But I think even the worst case scenarios aren't ones where we're doing like nothing. It would just be ones where, you know, like, because no matter what, people are going to slow the spread, or like hospitals are going to buff up their resources, or like everyone in the medical industry is going to be pushing as hard as they can to find treatments. And like humans are pretty good at finding stuff. I think I'm generally an optimist.
Yeah, and like now that it's been like, it feels like a corner has kind of been turned now that people, like, the world is mobilizing on this. Like there was a while where it felt like I don't know, that there was an exponential ramp up that was not being matched by an exponential ramp up on the part of society to like take it seriously.
There
But
was.
I think that's
Right now,
pretty clearly I don't know. It's pretty clear to me that the corner is turned on that.
and also, if you look at the number of new reported cases per day, at least for the last couple days, it hasn't been growing exponentially. It's leveled off, um, which might
Yeah.
be that we're seeing the effects of social distancing, but there's necessarily going to be a lag because of the delay in testing. It might be a statistical fluke. It's a little too early to
Yeah,
tell.
like in the US
Um,
it's looking something like quadratic right now. Like the
mm,
number of cases per like new cases per day seems to be going up about linearly to me, at least in the past couple weeks. So you know,
yeah. So
still growing, but
we'll see if
better.
that trend
Yeah.
continues. Um, what I was going to say is that uh, I wonder if people will kind of reevaluate what they're even pointing their whole lives towards.
Hmm.
And especially, I mean, I'm in Silicon Valley, and you kind of have a lot of people who are, um, there's just like a lot of different companies doing fun and interesting things of varying levels of like broad view importance. Uh, people will maybe be very, very quick to criticize like social media companies as like, oh, you're just gonna like work at Facebook or like some new upstart that's like letting people chat with each other or like share pictures with each other.
Yeah.
Like in comparison to something like medical research or um, I don't know, sustainable energy or whatever like big thing sort of takes you, it doesn't have the same clout. And I do think that there's high value in connectedness. So maybe for certain kinds of social media, like people will be quick to undervalue it. But on the whole, I would be interested if more like engineers think, I actually want to point my efforts towards something that would help stymie the next pandemic or
Yeah.
something that will help address some of these other like leading causes of death. Um, and the you can always say that in the abstract, but I wonder if the fact that we're at a point where everyone's banding together to do it in some concrete sense makes that pitch all the more visceral
Hmm.
afterwards.
Does it change your perspective at all on your own work?
Wow, that's maybe a little. Like I will say it the two videos that I've made related to like the outbreak have felt very different and like have this feeling of I'm not gonna be falsely grandiose and think like, oh, they'll definitely save lives or something. But the idea that they like maybe help accelerate a message that's worth spreading or provide like a more calming analysis of a situation rather than a like hysteria inducing um, tone.
Hmm.
Maybe the hope would be that that's like a welcome escape from other headlines that people see. Like it's somehow felt a little bit more important than other types of things that I've made. And I was talking to you a little bit before the stream about like an experiment I might try in a couple of weeks that while it's not necessarily content pertaining to the pandemic, it would be kind of indirect response to what's happening that I'll see if I do it and how it goes, but it would heavily be motivated by the thought of like, here's a group that might need some help and like, let's just see if we can directly help them.
Hmm.
Um, which it's not that that's not a thing I think about usually, but this has a way of raising that higher to the top of mind.
Yeah, well, I've been noticing that like there's an element of social solidarity that this pandemic has served to put into place that I think I don't know. I don't think that it has. I don't think that I've seen a version of that, at least in Canada, like in my lifetime. And I think it's something that people often point to as like, you know, when people talk about like, oh, what's wrong with millennials, or like what, like why is this generation confused or whatever. Um, like I don't know. There's a to the point where like there's a satirist that I follow called JReg on YouTube, and he has videos about like, hey guys, I think maybe I want there to be a war. Or, like not seriously, but like I kind of want to die in a war because like I want like I have nothing to fight for, and I feel like I don't care about anybody and nobody cares about me, and I feel like there's a way in which this has like it's changed that visibly in the people around me, and it's like changed it for me too. Like there's been a like it's one of the reasons I'm doing this thing is like, well, what can I actually do with my skill set to like for everyone in like as everyone in society is trying to like combat this meta problem that's like a pandemic that spills into other problems also all over the place. You know, it's like this, and then so like that's me doing this, but then also like in terms of where do I want to go from here? Like it's made me think more seriously about I don't know, like what other black swan type events are there that might hit us? Is there anything I can do about them? I've been interested for quite a long time in like these questions of AI safety and like what like Yudkowsky is doing with like the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, and like I don't know, is it worth at least getting like doing more on that front? I don't know. I'm asking more questions definitely about, hey, there are world-changing events that I might have a part to play in. So
I think one thing, if I think of where science communicators could play a difference, is trying to normalize nuclear power and like actually communicate that it's very different from how it was in the 60s and 70s. Like it does feel like the biggest impediment on that one is social perception more than it is technological. So if you take the community that is kind of able to shape social perception to some extent, like that might be the highest leverage point. Whereas maybe you have ideas on what you can do to help with like AI safety, but even if that was a more important problem, I don't know how leveraged like the science communication community actually is on that front.
Yeah, that's a.
Ooh, we have another one of those like highlighted by money questions that makes me feel like
I originally did not like. I thought that I had not turned those on for the stream, and then people just started sending them. I was like, oh, whoops. Okay, I guess they're here now. Yeah.
Someone says they watched my COVID video the day before the first case was reported in their country, and they shared it with everyone that they knew. Thank you, RG.
Well, I sent your second video in an email to Brian May, and he likes it quite a bit. So you have now.
Sorry, who's Brian May?
The guitarist for Queen. He's now
cool.
A fan of yours. So
who knew?
And he told me, hey, I'm going to share this with someone I know in the British government. So you might through a weird chain influence policy in some way, but I'm sure you already, I don't know, lots of people are seeing your video.
No, that's awesome. That's like very cool to hear. I never would have thought.
Yeah,
the guitarist of Queen.
He's got a PhD in physics and does a lot of work with NASA. So he's
that's awesome.
Interesting person.
And you just text with him?
Not commonly, but I sent him a thank you because he was like you and me. He was very early in like using his platform to like talk about the pandemic and like try to get people actual information about it. And whereas like you and I feel like we're like we can seep out, but we're a little siloed in our like nerds are the people who watch us. But for him, it's like he's watched by dads and rocker dudes and all sorts of other things. So like to see him sharing like that Medium post about like here's the hard numbers on the pandemic and like what should be done about it. It was like really inspiring to me. I was like, oh, here's a person who like a world figure who cares about this. And I just emailed him thank you, and weirdly enough he he responded. So
that's awesome.
I've been shuttling him a few resources here and there. We got another 5 minutes, so it's time for the theme song. So you ready to hear this theme song? It's
I'm so excited right now.
Let's do it. Right, we got that. Let's put in the bass. All right.
Oh, get the reverb. We're gonna sing about science. We're gonna sing about science. Yeah, we're gonna sing about science. We're gonna sing about science. Yeah, we're gonna sing about science. We're gonna sing about science. Yeah, we're gonna sing about science.
Yeah, right.
We're gonna sing about science.
Gonna sing about
Yeah,
science.
we're gonna sing about.
All right, so what did we talk about today? We talked about
nature versus nurture.
Nature versus nurture. Shoot. All right. Let's see what we got.
Every day there is a debate about which which fifth facets of you are innate. It's a debate I had with Corey about music theory. Yeah, oh. Grant brought it up while we were streaming about whether it has more meaning to have learned something or just to be born with it. Oh yeah, whew. Let's see. If you get something in early childhood, you could mistake it for something within you. If you get it later, you can point it out. Oh yeah. We think the one is one within us. Maybe both are learned behaviors. Grant thinks you gotta practice a lot. Oh yeah. We're gonna sing about science. Yeah. We're gonna sing about science. Ooh, yeah.
What else did we talk about today?
We're gonna sing about science.
We talked about
we're gonna sing about science.
Busking?
Busking.
Yeah,
That's not science, but we can do it.
The science of busking.
Science.
The scientific approach to seed money.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Right.
we're gonna sing about if you go out onto the street and there's a rent that you're trying to meet, you gotta do your best. You gotta open up that musical chest called a guitar case. You put it down and people throw some money on the ground. Oh, but getting lots of money is a special case. Doesn't happen outside of film festivals. If you want it to go well, there are some techniques that Grant can know well. He says you put in $1 and another $1 and maybe also a $5. And then people see that it tricks the psychology to go back and go to your case and put in more. They think it's socially accepted, and then you pay your rent and survival. Yeah, it's time to sing about, gonna sing about science. Yeah, we're gonna sing about science. Gonna sing about science. We're gonna sing about science. Yeah, we're gonna sing about.
All right. I think that's enough. That is our show for the day. I hope that was acceptable to you, Grant.
This was absolutely delightful.
Well, I'm glad you were able to come on. I've been teasing you for a while. So in the chat, tell us, just spam your name so we can read out some. There's a lot more of you today than there usually are. So I probably won't get to everybody, but just like spam thanks or hi or whatever, and I'm gonna try to read off as many as I can. We got K Rose Go, we got King Gaming, Vito Lebomil, Ewajasix here, Firia Atan, hello, we got Geek Jokes, Rubiat, Mehdi Fahad, I'm gonna mess with so many names. Then we got Allison Walker, we got Mary Mead, King Gaming's back as usual. We got Raphael, Catherine Rosegove is there again, Peter Williams, hey, Jane Cooper, we got Sintu Gunturi, we got Jason Spence, Morgan Harris, Beaker Rockets back, Chino Hoshi is here again, we have Jeanette Larson, Sintu Gunturi, oh, it's picking up, Marcel Davis, Parth Patel, Ann Smith, oh, Alex Noth, Non-Euclidean Dreamer, Matthias B, A.A. Bowser, we got Aren't Thou Mad, Aleka, Rubiat, oh, these things are going faster than I can read them. Philippa Beckman is here, Proxentari is back, Tommaso Marcuso, oh, let's see, we got Loeb Coper in the chat, Renata Luis de Freitas Cunha is here, Timojo, or Timojo, Carrie Adams, oh, you went by too fast, we got the Amateur, the Meteor Angler, Mr. Exquisite, Elephant Number 5, Sven Look, I'm sorry to everybody I couldn't get to, thank you so much for being on the stream. Thanks, Grant, for coming along. And I don't know, any final words? Anything you want to tell people about what's going on with you?
Wash your hands.
You heard it here
It really
first,
works.
folks.
It really works.
Maybe you heard it here last. Yeah, watch Grant's video on simulating pandemics, because yeah, there's some good things in there, especially about how weirdly effective washing your hands is, and also testing people.
Testing.
Yeah.
Yeah. God. that one's less of a conclusion to like change what people do than it is to like change the structures that we place for the future.
Fair enough. Well, hopefully you get in the hands of some legislators and they can, I don't know. Yeah.
If you know any legislators, share the videos.
Yes, that's a universal. It doesn't have to be right now. We like our videos to be watched by legislators. It's we just have a nice category for them that we appreciate. All right, signing off. See you later. Whoa, that's not the right video. Yeah, gonna sing about
science. We're gonna sing about science. Ooh, yeah, yeah, we're gonna see you tomorrow. We might have another guest. It might be the Burger Krieg. I'm not sure. I haven't confirmed. Otherwise, we'll do a solo stream. All right, we're gonna go. See you later. Subscribe to the channels, etc. Bye.